Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Arizona Monthly Housing Market Update. I'm Katie, and this is
Matt and
Ryan. Hello,
Hey,
everyone.
team. Welcome.
Wow,
We
guys,
are
last one of the
right.
year.
I was just going to say that this is the last show of 2024. How are we feeling?
Feeling good.
Feeling good. Feeling positive. I'm excited for this one. We got a lot to cover. It's been a while, right? Since Halloween, we recorded the last one. So
Exactly, which was right before the election. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, how elections have affected our market, what we see coming up in the first quarter of 2025. But first, and we've got a little bit of advice for buyers and sellers too. So like Ryan said, we're going to pack a punch in this episode, but let's start with where we always start, with rates. Take it away, Ryan.
yeah, thank you. As I mentioned, a lot has happened since we last spoke. As you can imagine, the biggest market moving thing was the election. And of course, Donald Trump will be the 47th president of the United States. And the stock market, as you probably all have noticed, has really rallied since the election because a Trump presidency is really seen as being more favorable to the economy as his policies are characterized by tax cuts and deregulation. So we were hitting record highs, obviously, in the stock market after the election. But on the other end, we have seen rates increase since their 2024 lows in September. And this is mainly because, spending could increase, which is good for the economy, but that can pressure inflation higher. And some of the tariffs that have been discussed, that could increase prices and maybe inflation as well. So that's what some of the market's been taking a look at. And that's why we saw a little bit of a jump in rates. But as we discussed in the past, higher inflation does lead to higher mortgage rates. And that's really what we've seen over the past 60 days. But as things really have settled, we're getting to focus more on the fundamentals of the market. And, and we should see rates start to trend lower again. And we have actually over the past few weeks. So inflation numbers are really coming in as predicted. And with the trend lower that we're seeing in shelter costs, we should see drops in early 2025 and get closer really to the Federal Reserve's target. The job market is really kind of showing signs of weakening too, and the Fed's really looking at that. So it's really widely predicted that they're going to drop rates another quarter. That's at December 18th is their meeting. So that's most likely going to happen. So, after that, the typical volatility that we see during the election period, we're getting back to really the trend that we've been seeing all year. And that's with inflation going down, rates coming down with it. And many predict that will continue in 2025.
Yeah. And then as far as what's going on right now and what's happened, since we last met and since we last, our last show, it's kind of a bit interesting. And Matt, I would love for you to dive in here because you're inventory man. But, it was kind of a little slow, right? We did have the uptick in rates. That does affect things. We had the elections coming. So some people felt like they needed to sit the fence, see what was going to happen, that kind of thing. And now we're in the holiday season. So our expectation, because the market's cyclical every year, it slows down during this time, right? But that kind of surprised us the last week or so. Matt and I actually were on our way over the weekend. We went to visit some friends in Lake Havasu, and we were on our way there. And I was telling him, I'm like, there's a disturbance in the force. Like I'm seeing some, buyers are jumping off the fence. I'm getting people over to Ryan, talking to Ryan this week, which, was light for a couple of weeks. Let's just face it. And, things are starting to churn. And sure enough, we saw that reflected in the stats this week.
Yeah, 100%. And it was, I have to say, it was a bit surprising. Now, granted, trying to, read and predict things through the chaos of this previous election, everything we had to do as humans to sort through real news, fake news, and everything in between. Does that really instill confidence? Not really,
Right.
Especially when it's like, hey, the world's going to end either way if one of these candidates win, it seemed like the message was. So, but I think a lot of people have taken a big, deep breath. And I didn't think I was going to see the results of that big, deep breath, especially during one of our historically more quiet holiday weekends.
Right.
Thanksgiving has always been a week where like everyone just shuts it off. Mm-hmm. They're not looking, and it usually continues through the week following. And that's usually when you can start really looking at, all right, what are we going to see for this last few weeks of the year? And can really kind of tell you how we're going to run into the year that's coming. And for what we saw was just a huge spike, and not so much just like the weekend or just following. It started the day of Thanksgiving. Like we saw a lot of our lead systems. We had offers coming in the
We
night.
negotiated an offer at the Thanksgiving table.
Really wild. So, of course, we kind of had to pinch ourselves and say, is this an anomaly? But no, we looked at it, and then I pulled stats for Greater Metro Phoenix weekly. And what we've seen now is, I would say, an average of about a 1.2% drop in inventory over the last 2 weeks in a row. And that's the first time we've seen a drop in, it was like 9 weeks in inventory. Everything has been going up at least 1%. So the timing of it, I think, says a lot. I think there's just a lot of people that have been waiting, planning, and now that the dust has settled, they're really looking at things and saying, you know what, all the ingredients are here for me to make sense to kind of hit the ground running.
Absolutely. I was speaking with another agent, not on our team or in our office, with somebody that showed one of our listings. And I was talking with them yesterday, and we got into a conversation about how things have been going for them with their buyers. And we felt, because we had multiple offers on that property that we negotiated at the Thanksgiving table, which was a little shocking for us. And this particular buyer's agent mainly works with buyers. And he was saying that he was placing offers for his buyers on other properties, and they had multiple offers as well. So I guess we're seeing that this season. Is that something that you're seeing also, Ryan?
Yeah, we really are. I think we're kind of seeing this window now where buyers are realizing it's a little bit more of a buyer's market right now. As Matt said, we had seen increases in inventory. And we just finally saw some go down as we're starting to see some buyers snatch those up. And I think a lot of them are understanding it might be busier next year as we kind of continue to see rates go lower. There might be more competition, and might as well jump in while there's more options available and before things get a little too frenzied, So we're kind of seeing that right now. We were very busy too. Gosh, we were working all Friday after the Thanksgiving, just kind of on sending pre-approvals, and we got a whole bunch of contracts on Monday. So yeah, something happened. It was one of the busier holidays we've had.
Yeah, absolutely. We felt it too. And, I want to offer a little bit of advice for both buyers and sellers out there, because, this is the show to do it on. And I wanted to, let's talk about buyers for a moment, because what you just said, I think, is really important. I want to make sure that that's not lost on anybody, is that this right now, and even though we just said, hey, there's properties out there that have multiple offers, hey, inventory is down a little bit and things have ticked up a little bit, there are still plenty of opportunities out there to get closing costs paid, less, negotiate on the purchase price, rate buy downs, get your buyer's agent commissions paid by the seller. We're still seeing quite a bit of that. And I think it's kind of the calm before the storm right now, is if you're a buyer that is, you want to get into the market, get into a home, within the next couple of months, I really think now is the time to look at that, especially if you're one of those people that doesn't like to compete with others. And we know that they're out there. I mean, we've had people when, back in we'll call it the heyday, when things were crazy. We were just talking about this before we hopped on the show a couple of years back, when it was nuts and I was writing, over 20 offers a day. I had buyers that were like, you know what, peace out. I'll come back when I don't have to compete with somebody else. It's too much anxiety. I'm uncomfortable with it. And, I'll see you on the other side, kind of thing. So are you seeing a bit of that too?
I think that's what we're seeing too with, competition, and why new construction has thrived so much.
Yes.
I think it's up 30% is what I was reading this year. And yeah, because obviously there's not competition. You go in and there's houses available. You could get your lot. And they just have so many incentives right now with home builders, that they're trying to get their homes sold and off the books right now. They have interest rate buy downs. They have closing costs covered, appliances.
End of year.
Yeah, end of year, So I think that's another thing that's really driving up activity now, is new construction too. And that's for the people who don't want to, go into those multiple offers. It's just like, let me just go into this new construction community.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if you don't mind being a bit out in the outskirts. Maybe a lot of people still work remote.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've been having those conversations and I'm like, oh, wow, remote is still like a thing. Obviously,
Yeah.
we've always worked remote, so I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, I kind of don't much pay attention to that, but I have been having these conversations and I'm like, oh, wow. So a lot of people do still have that flexibility that we saw, after the pandemic, during the pandemic and that kind of thing. But sellers. So let's talk a little bit about sellers and what our advice is for sellers right now, because Matt, we list a lot of properties. We do work with buyers, but we really are a listing team. And so, we talk with a lot of sellers. And the biggest question that we're getting right now is, well, should I list now or should I, wait a couple months? So what have you been telling people, Matt?
I think everyone comes to the table with this question, and rightfully so. And it's a very personal question. It's about their home. And all the information that they're getting is very generalized. It's going to be something that's not only just specific to the state, most of the narratives and messages that we're getting from the news and such is going to be nationally.
Right.
So kind of rightfully so for people to be like, what should I really, sink my teeth in as something that applies to me in my situation. And I think that's the exact focus that needs to happen. And every situation is different. And that's why I firmly believe that everyone needs to speak to their chosen professional. And I really want to put air quotes around professional, someone that's doing this, full time, sleeps, and this is their life. Because that's who you're going to want in these type of markets. You're going to want to have someone that has had experience in the past and understands how these things might move, because they can look at what's happening right now and kind of say, I've seen this before, and this is what I'm anticipating for the future. The other side of it is it's very, very direct and individualized, because it's really going to be on where your home is located, what community, what is the size of the home, what's the condition of the home, what's the price point of the home. And all of these are going to be, vastly different as far as how you're going to see the market respond. So that's where I would firmly say that I don't think there's a one shoe fits all type of situation in this, but I do say that it's more favorable. I don't think that the sky's falling in any one of these categories. I do think that there's a proper plan that could be, created to alleviate you, the seller, of some stress, to kind of say, all right, this is what I'm anticipating, and kind of tailor that to your needs. Clearly, if you're in a situation of like, hey, sense of urgency, I don't have any choices, then you really don't have any choices. And we really have to navigate the waters that we're in. And I have to say, they're not that bad. As long as you do this proactively, you get all your ducks in a row and you come in strong, you're going to see results. We are in by no means a market that you're not going to see results. Now, as far as like, hey, I've got time, and this isn't, then you can kind of really look at it and iron out, whatever the most important factors of this move are to you. And that professional would really be able to say, all right, is it price? Is it timing? Is it, what are we really trying to make happen for you? And I think, once again, there's a lot of light at the end of the tunnel. I do think, regardless, going into 2025, we're still going to see a good year. We're speaking about this earlier. Zillow's forecasting 2% growth in home values nationally this year, and Realtor.com is expecting home prices at an additional 3.7 in 2025. So what that tells us is, no one's saying, oh, we're at zero or we're thinking negative. They're seeing appreciation, almost our standard 3%, which they say is a healthy home growth. So that being said, I think a lot of people are getting used to these rates. So sellers really need to consider that and say, what's my unique position here and what's going to be best, and speak to your professional, because there are solutions for that and you're going to see good results.
I totally agree. And I obviously agree with speaking with and listening to your experienced professional. And conversation should be surrounding these particular topics. If you are a seller that is looking to hop into the market right now, you should be talking about property condition. You should be talking about competitive pricing. You should be talking about budgeting to pick up buyer's closing costs, possibly a rate buy down, repairs, buyer agent commissions. You should be prepared to potentially have to hunker down for 30 to 60 days, say. These are conversations that if you are not having with your experienced professional, you need to either ask them or find yourself somebody else, to put it bluntly.
100%. 100%. And there's a lot of tools that, sellers can use to be proactive, to kind of put their toe in the water, to test the market, to test pricing, just so they don't kind of just come out in an incorrect way that might not serve them. A lot of realtors don't have the patience, the expertise, and the seasoned ability to kind of reflect on, hey, what was going to deliver these results, and confidently tell their clients to do this. They're more like, we just need to do this, get it on. And sometimes that's not the case. Every situation's a bit different.
I absolutely agree. And, there are, not trying to poo-poo anyone out there, because we're all at different levels, but there are also agents out there that don't follow what drives the market, and they don't understand that. So they have less advice in that department as to what can you expect? Yeah. What is driving buyers right now? What isn't? That kind of stuff. So I think that that's super important too. One question that I'm getting a lot, not to super gear change here, but I know we only have so much time and we have a lot to say. But one conversation that I've been having a lot, Ryan, and in fact, we have a mutual client right now I just had this conversation with yesterday, is down payment assistance programs. So there are, handfuls and handfuls of people out there that don't know they exist, that could be very much helped by them. There are also handfuls of people out there that think they only exist for first-time buyers. Wow. And a little caveat to that, they don't even know what makes a first-time buyer. And that's not, again, not to poo-poo them. That's not something that they do every day, or maybe have access to that particular information. But I wanted to clarify that for people out there that might be struggling to come up with a down payment at this point, but they want to jump into a property. What can you tell us about these programs, and what is a first-time buyer?
Yeah, I'm so glad we're talking about this, because you're right. There still is that down payment misconception out there. And it was really kind of passed down from our grandparents and great-grandparents, that 20% down is required to buy a house, because that's how much you needed to, in the 60s and 70s. But it's not, that's not the case anymore. But it's incredible how often it still comes up. Like, oh, I don't have my 20% down yet. But really, for an FHA loan or a conventional loan, you could get into a home with as little as 3.5% or 3% down for those programs. And you can get those that down payment covered with the programs that are out there. There's a lot of different down payment assistance options. There are just local ones, like here in Arizona, we have one called Home in 5, Home Plus, Arizona is Home. Those are great programs, and we're using those all the time. And it covers that entire 3 to 3.5% down payment. The thing with those programs, you do have to have kind of low to moderate income. They do have income restrictions. So, but the great thing though is there's a lot of private banks out there that offer programs that have no income restrictions. So if you don't qualify for the Arizona programs, there are other programs out there from different specific portfolio banks that are offering them. So really, we have about close to a dozen now other programs outside of the state one. So if down payment is an issue, there's always going to be a plan. There's always going to be an option for you. And we do get that a lot. I'm glad you mentioned that. Is really, the first-time home buyers. We have people who aren't first-time home buyers, but still need assistance, and they don't think they could get it. But that's just not the case anymore. All the programs right now, as long as you're actually buying the house and you're going to be living in the home, you could typically qualify for these down payment assistance programs. And first-time home buyers, obviously, if you've never bought a house, you would be a first-time home buyer. But if you haven't owned a home in 3 years, or if your partner or spouse hasn't, you are considered a first-time home buyer as well, which is interesting. So a lot of people don't know that. You're kind of reset after a 3-year waiting period as a first-time home buyer. But the great news is you don't even have to be one to qualify for the majority of these programs.
Yeah, and that's the conversation that I had yesterday. So be prepared for the question to come from our mutual client. I'll tell you when we get off the show. So I think that though, thank you for sharing that, because that is super important with, in this day and age where people are, budgets are a little restricted. I think that it's any resource that we can share that helps out so that somebody can get into a home of their own is really important. So thank you for sharing that. Anything else about first quarter 2025, what we can expect? Any last minute advice, guys, that we didn't get to that you think is important?
Sure. I'll give my prediction here from what I'm reading. I'm glad we recorded today because a lot of predictions came out this week, really. And a lot of the mortgage experts out there who I know and trust, they're really thinking that average mortgage rates right now, for instance, a conventional rate is about a 6.75%. But they're thinking it could drop as low as a 5.875, and more conservative estimates are maybe a 6.25. So I kind of alluding to what I said at the beginning, we are expected to continue to see rates drop. And really what's interesting is once you get under that 6% range, that's going to be really big, I think. And that's going to be a market mover for a lot of buyers to get off the fence and start buying. And maybe that's why a lot of them are jumping in right now, because they do see how, rates will improve, and that could really increase competition.
Yeah, and they're still getting wildly incentivized right now. And so that's really helpful too, right? Might as well use somebody else's money to get benefit for me. So I get it. Anything from your corner, Matthew?
No, I think just kind of like doing a full circle on everything that we talked about, especially for the buyers out there, everything that we're reading 2025, it seems like we're going to see appreciation. We're going to probably see maybe a little bit of inventory trickle up at certain points. We're going to see rates go down. So what I see here is just a really good runway. And I think, I do feel like, and listening to many sources, that this is the beginning of probably a really good economic boon, seeing our GDP increase, fighting a lot of this debt, and really seeing all sectors of our economy really thrive. Now, that being said, it usually takes a little bit of time to get to that. So that's where I see 2025 as this kind of shake the dust off, stretch our legs, and start running. Now, where this kind of pertains to these first-time home buyers is to exactly what you were saying, Kate, before, is we've seen what happens when we get into a hotter market. When inventory drops and the demand is there, you see a lot more competition. You see the market where sellers are going to be selective, and they're going to choose the buyers that are going to be the cleanest cut, biggest down, least risk,
Cash.
highest price. And that's who they're going to choose, rightfully so. So in the 2025 market, it's perfect for those first-time home buyers, or those buyers that are potentially even having to buy contingent on selling another home. This market's welcoming of that.
Yes.
And then people that have buyer assistant programs, as Ryan just mentioned, this is the perfect, marketplace for sellers to strongly consider these and still give you that competitive edge as a buyer. The last thing you want to do is not get, I don't want to say the word greedy, but that's where a lot of people will get. They almost wait for this perfect time where it has to be what they think is the absolute bottom to buy. And you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot by taking that approach, especially if you're not an investor and this is about your personal home for you and your family.
All right.
So I do think this is, if you're planning on buying, you're planning on using these tools, such as down payment assistance, or you need closing costs, this is going to be a real good market to do that and have choice, selection, and not have to be super competitive. And I think when it does change and when things do take off, it's going to happen quick, because it's not like we are dancing in a super high inventory market where we're very much a buyer's market. No, not at all. We're like a few thousand homes away from being a seller's market again.
Yeah.
So we saw what happened in 2020. We dropped 5,000 homes in 2 months. If that happened again, we would be deep in a seller's market, and we would see this shift in a 2-month period. And we all know how fast 2 months goes.
Yeah. And I agree with you on how swift it can move. And, so I've been doing this 20 years, and back in the day, I had a mentor, and my mentor always used to tell me it's really difficult to time the market, because the only time you know when you've hit the bottom is when you start going up.
Yeah. 100%.
So
100%. And not to go too much on a tangent on this one, but I think, us being both, Arizona realtors for the past 20 years, we've seen here in Arizona specifically, and back in the day before these, before COVID, we always had a not so much a soft, but yeah, I would say that a soft rental market. which never really made sense, where our rental prices were never really aligned with home value prices and mortgage prices. And when we all of a sudden saw that inventory all disappear and Arizona boom and everyone move here and our economy pick up, our rental market has now been very linear. And that is going to be a very, very good indicator on what is affordable for shelter, for housing. And now what we've seen over these last, couple of years with really high interest rates and people moving since we've kind of crawled out of COVID and things changing, is we haven't seen rental rates drop. Yeah. They've fluctuated slightly, but they're still right there, which tells us consumers are now conditioned for these prices that are aligned with this 6% ranged interest rate. So that being said, the second we start dipping into those fives, it's just going to be that much more of an incentive for people to jump out of renting, pick up this home. And so, yeah, there's just a lot there that says this 25 is going to be a good runway and this is the time to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree. All right, guys. Well, see you next year.
Oh, yes.
5. Can't believe you're saying that.
Yeah,
it's crazy. We hope that you all have an amazing holiday season. If you want to check out any of our previous episodes, we've been doing this for years and years and years now. So go back a couple years and see if we were right in those predictions. It is at Team Evo AZ is our handle across all social media. We have a quite robust YouTube channel, so please check that out. There's over 1,000 videos over there. That's where you will find the playlist for the Arizona Monthly Housing Market Update. Also on your favorite podcast platform, do a quick search for Arizona Real Estate Radio. There you will find us and all of our informative shows. There's another show that Ryan's on too, so check that out. All right, guys. Bye.
Awesome. Happy New Year. Merry Christmas. Bye.